to feed me 24/7, and I ain't never gonna stop, no.
Hello, welcome back to my channel. If it's your first time here, then hi, welcome. My name is Do Darling, or if you've been watching for a while now, then thanks for sticking around. And as you can see, I'm joined by Med.
Hello. Oh, thanks for having me.
It's so great to be doing another video with you again. It's been so long.
It's been too long, so it's hello to all the viewers, and I hope you watched the adverts before starting this video.
Appreciate it. So we actually watched the Get Back film together, which was nice. And in this video we are just going to be giving a reaction and review of the film because we are both massive Beatles fans and couldn't wait for this film to come out. So Med actually sent me the trailer and this was my reaction. I said, Med, I can't cope. I can't stop watching. It's like the Beatles are alive now, but I know they aren't. But it's like watching a documentary of a band that's just releasing an album this year. But the album's like 50 years ago, and so is the footage. But like, what? I can't. It looks amazing. I might react to it on my channel just so I can talk about it because I need to talk about it. So that was my reaction to the trailer. When I first heard it wasn't going to be in the cinema, I was a bit like, I really wanted to watch it in the cinema. I remember watching other films, like I watched the John Lennon like Imagine one. It was so awesome in the cinema. Like I understood the decision, but at the same time I was just like, And then when I found out it's going to be on Disney Plus, and I was just like,
Yeah, I would have loved to have seen it on the big screen, but in exchange for that, you get 3 times as much Beatles stuff.
Yeah, like that was the up point. A lot more, and like literally at that point I would have just watched anything with the Beatles. If it's something I hadn't seen of the Beatles, that's what excited me the most. Like I hadn't seen any of this footage. It was like something fresh and new about the Beatles, and like that is rare, so super excited to watch it.
Yeah, I think they exhausted all the studio films a few years ago. Everything had been seen, but then all these films turned up. I think they were stolen at one point and then rediscovered by the police after some years. And so all these films came back, and suddenly there's hours and hours of Beatles just in the studio. And you know, it's not all creative. There's lots of messing about and stuff, which I think every band needs to do.
You're in a band yourself, so you get the dynamic, and like I'm not in a band. I'm kind of jealous, but yeah, so watching the how bands actually create their music was really fascinating, something like I was really interested in watching.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, that bit where Paul's just on the bass and suddenly you hear Get Back starting to form.
Get Back is such a good song. But before we get into that, let's start with episode 1. The first episode is the creative ways in which they held and put their cigarettes so they could carry on playing. Was it just me? My eyes were drawn to it. I was like, why is his cigarette stuck in the end of his guitar?
I think if you're a musician in the 60s, you learn how to do that.
And I was looking through our conversation because we were like talking, because we were watching it online together on the Disney Plus, and we were like in the DMs at the same time, and I was reading our conversation, and we was talking a lot about the tea and the toast. There was a lot of tea and there was a lot of toast going down, which I approved of the toast, and you definitely approved of the tea.
Oh yeah, I probably drink as much tea as all 4 Beatles.
That is true. He is like always, even when he's out, he carries a flask with him of tea. I just expect him to open his coat and take out a cup of tea. Like, see, he's a tea. I don't drink tea, but I do like toast, but only cold toast. Anyway, back to the Beatles. Like when people spoke of the time, the Let It Be time, they always speak about how there was like conflict and there was like fighting and falling out and, you know, George leaving the band, and, you know, it was all like kind of doom and gloom when people spoke about these kind of sessions. And watching the first episode, obviously that's when George did like walk out for a few days. And there was like that little struggle between Paul and George, and, you know, Paul was like kind of controlling, and I get it, but, you know, this film also made me kind of feel for Paul, because I felt like he kind of had to take control because no one else was, and he had to kind of step up and someone had to do it. They initially thought they had like 2 weeks, right, to finish the whole thing, so like someone had to take charge or nothing would have got done. And so yeah, I kind of felt for Paul because he kind of had to take charge, but at the same time I also felt for George, because he was kind of overlooked all the time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think in any band situation, if you put a lot of musicians in a room and just leave them, you know, they'll start maybe talking little individual groups, and they'll start just playing little bits completely unconnected to each other. And there always has to be one person who stands up and says, come on, everybody, right, let's do this song now. You play it like this, you play that. And somebody has to really orchestrate it all. And that person always is at risk of being a sort of teacher figure and slightly resented by the others because they're spoiling everybody's fun because they're just happily messing about. And somebody says, no, start playing properly now.
And no one likes the teacher, so
yeah,
it's
so Paul
unfortunate.
was kind of taking on that situation himself because, yeah, they had this really, what seemed at the time like a brick wall of a deadline because they had time booked on the television.
I couldn't believe like everything they were trying to do. So they was trying to make the album and record this video and come up with all these songs and what, like in 2 weeks or something. I was just like, this is no, how are you doing this? Like it's too much. Like, and I think that didn't help. It didn't help the fact that they were in that huge studio, which just didn't seem, I don't know, it didn't seem to work for what they were doing. I don't think any of them really felt comfortable there, and it didn't work with like the pressure of the time issue, you know. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw an interview with Peter Jackson, and they'd done something amazing with technology, new technology for this, because all that stuff in the film studio, it wasn't like in a recording studio where you've got every instrument and every microphone on a separate track of tape and you can isolate things. It was all just recorded on a kind of 2-track, I think 1/4-inch tape by the film crew. So basically it was what you heard is what was recorded. And John and George in particular were, when they didn't want their conversation to be overheard, they'd sort of hit some notes on the guitar and just talk to each other. There's a bit where Michael Lindsay Hogg comes over and says, could you turn your guitars down because the microphones aren't picking you up, aren't picking your voices up. George says, what, you're recording our conversation?
But like,
As a joke.
I did feel like they felt kind of like uncomfortable as well with, especially George and stuff. Like, he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to do the film. He didn't want to do this stuff, you know. And I think that was like one of the issues as well. Whereas Paul was like, no, we need to do something bigger. We need to do something better. Like each album's got to do something new. He was like really trying to drive it and push the envelope with the Beatles, when George was kind of like I don't really want to do this film, and like kind of felt uncomfortable. But I noticed that Paul too was very aware that he was being recorded, and he didn't want to come across like in a bad way towards George. Like there was that conversation where George is just like, just tell me what to play and I'll play it, but you don't know what you want me to play. And Paul was like trying to talk to him, but I could see that he was like very conscious of like the cameras and the microphones, and he didn't want to come across as like this bad guy. But I also felt very frustrated for George. But the moment when George walked out, I don't know, like if I zoned out for a second, that he just stood up and was like, okay, bye, I'm out, I'm leaving the Beatles or something. It was just like so casual, and I was just like, wait, what? Did did George just leave?
Yeah, I think he had all these resentments that had been building up for over quite some time of not being as his material not being taken as seriously as John and Paul's. And when they would try one of George's songs, I think he felt that they were just sort of going through the motions in accompanying him, and yeah, a lot more time would be spent on the other guy's songs. And he'd write things like "Only a Northern Song" because he's saying, "You're not bothering with my material because it's only a Northern song. It's not one of yours." Just what I was saying before about them drowning out the conversations deliberately with the instruments. They used this new technology. They used a new type of AI, and they teach it. This is what John Lennon's voice sounds like. This is what Paul McCartney's voice sounds like, etc. This is what a bass sounds like. This is what a drum sounds like, and it's able to separate all these things on the recording.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, so suddenly you can isolate all these things and you can hear what they're saying, and this Ringo bashing away in the background, but you can't hear him because they've turned Ringo down in order to be able to hear the conversations. And that's
That
amazing.
yeah, that's one thing that I was like super impressed with, was like the quality of like the video and the sound and everything. It was just like incredible. Like watching it, like I said, it felt like the Beatles had come alive again. It was so the color and just I don't know, like seeing them that close and like that detailed and that like quality, it was just like magical to me. I was like, oh my gosh, the Beatles are alive. And yeah. Oh, can we talk about the little secret recording that they did? They put that microphone when they wow. Is that even legal? Like, what is going on? Like, I wonder how, well, obviously I
I
can't ask
wonder,
John how he feels, but I wonder how Paul feels about that now. Did he? They didn't know. They didn't know there was being recorded on that conversation, right?
definitely not at the time. I wonder if that was a factor in sort of the movie basically not being seen for all these years. That this is my complete speculation, but I can imagine they would have been pretty mad about that at the time. But 50
Yeah.
years later, you can look at it more as a historical document.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, so when George actually left, and I feel like John made some just throwaway kind of funny remark or something about getting Eric or someone. But how did you feel like they actually felt? I think Paul was. I think they were kind of worried. Like, is George actually going to come back? Like, I don't know, because obviously Ringo had previously left the Beatles first. Like before all this, he had already left once and come back, and then George walked out. Do you think they took it serious when he kind of walked out?
I think so. Yeah, because it took them a few attempts, a few meetings to get George to agree to come back.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and obviously one of George's conditions was that they stop being filmed constantly for this TV.
Right.
Although they managed to carry on filming in the studios, the recording studio, which was, I'm not sure how different that is, except they took away the deadline of the TV show.
Yeah, there was a lot. So I think that's going into the second one. I think that's where it started, where they went to, was it Twickenham?
Yeah.
The recording studio, and they seemed a lot like things like seemed so different when they got there. Like feel like the pressure of the deadline went, and the pressure of making this TV show kind of thing went, and there was back in like a proper like recording space, and it seemed to totally shift the atmosphere.
Yeah. But just before we move away from the film studios, one of the things that struck me about the first episode was basically throughout the entire thing, when the Beatles are together, Yoko Ono is sat next to John, and none of the others acknowledge her in any way. It's as though she's not there.
Not that
Not even
we saw anyway,
yeah,
you know. Yeah.
but no, yeah, it's not even a hi Yoko or how's it going. It's just acting as though she's not there. The guy inside in the corner of the room meditating got more attention than Yoko did in the film.
I have like a lot to say about Yoko as well, so let's get into that.
Anywhere you go, give it all.
Prior to this film, you know, throughout the years, so many people have been like, Yoko split up the Beatles. And when people say that to me, like, oh, Yoko split up the Beatles, normally, like a lot of the time, I think it's just lazy. They don't actually know. They haven't, it's just something they're repeating, like what they've heard. Oh, Yoko split up the Beatles. They haven't actually, you know, deep delved and worked out what was going on. They just kind of repeat it as it's a fact. And, you know, I never felt like Yoko split up the Beatles. I felt like there was many factors why the Beatles actually broke up. But yeah, watching this and seeing Yoko literally stuck to John Lennon's side, but I actually read that it was John that like wanted her to be there. Like I felt like I read something like even when she went to the bathroom, he had to go with her. Like he wanted to be next to her and her next to him all the time. So I don't feel like we can blame like Yoko for being there because it was like John wanted her there too. And I'm trying to imagine what it would be like going to my partner's workplace and just sitting in while he's working, like with all his workmates. It would be so awkward. Like even if it wasn't the Beatles, you know, just me going to his work and just sat there in the corner with my knitting, like sat right next to him. That is like an awkward dynamic though. I don't feel like they would even speak to me either and I won't speak. It'd just be awkward. I'd feel awkward.
Maybe you should try it just for comparison's sake.
It's making me cringe even just thinking of it. Like no. But I think like it must have been kind of boring for her too. I mean, yeah, it's the Beatles, but it's like it's your boyfriend and you're going to his work and you're just kind of like sat there for hours and hours on end and you're not really I didn't really see her say much or input much. I mean, there was a few times she was doing her singing like while they were like messing around and stuff, but I didn't really see her like butting in or like the way people used to speak about it. I used to think she'd be like split up the Beatles because she was like telling them, "Oh, why don't you do this?" She wasn't like that. But it was just the awkwardness, I think, of her being there, and suddenly it wasn't just them four; it was like them four and John's like girlfriend. It just made the dynamic like awkward. I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly about the timing, but when were John and Yoko in the fairly early stages of their relationship?
I mean, they weren't married because at one point John speaks that the Yoko's divorce has just come through with her previous husband, so then they could get married. So yeah, it was before they were married at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe they're in that really early stage of a relationship where they're sort of spending as much time as possible together.
I feel like they were like that throughout their entire relationship. Well, apart from the time when John like spent a year with another woman, but let's not talk about that. But yeah, I see what you mean. But like the other people's partners came into the studio. Like I saw Linda and I think I saw Ringo's. Who was he dating at the time? I can't remember, but they came in, but they they just wasn't in the inner circle. They were kind of step back a bit, you know. I can understand why the boys like found it a bit awkward. There was like, is it us or is it now us and Yoko? So I kind of get that, but also I don't like blame Yoko or think that she split up the Beatles. If I had to say what split up the Beatles, okay, I'm just going off on one here, is honestly I think it started when Brian died. Like honestly, I think that was like a starting point, but there was many other reasons, and also they're like growing up and going in their own directions and doing their own things and getting married to their own people and, you know, writing their own music, and no one was steering the ship of the Beatles anymore. It was just, yeah, I feel like it was a lot of things, and just saying it was Yoko is kind of lazy.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's really they were all sort of I think I read somewhere, wasn't George 27 when this was going on?
Yeah, they're all in the like late 20s, right?
That's no age. I mean,
I know, like I feel like ashamed of myself when I seen these in their 20s, what they achieved and what they accomplished and what the talent they have, and I'm just like over here 36 years old, like what?
yeah, I try not to think about it so much.
I know it can get depressing. Like what? But it's shocking, like so young and so talented and achieved so much already. But also you're in that point in your life where you're really, you're changing, you're growing up, like, and like life, life's happening.
Yeah, Ringo kind of had to wait around a lot as well, I think.
I feel like Ringo didn't really say much in the whole films, but the things that he did say were just like heartwarming as well. Like I felt like I discovered a new kind of love for Ringo. Like I always thought of Ringo as just this fun, easygoing, and he just seems very easygoing. I feel like he was okay to just go with whatever was going on, but that shouldn't take away like how incredibly talented he was as well as a drummer. Like he was awesome,
That's the thing. The Beatles would do dozens of takes of every song. Well, more than dozens. They could easily go into the 30s or of takes. And remember, they were recording these songs live in the studio. So, and Ringo was dead on every time, absolutely bang on.
I know,
and
right?
not locking everybody together.
And there was a really sweet moment. I can't remember if it was, I think it's the first or second, where Ringo just like was looking at Paul on piano. Was like, I could watch him play all day or something. It was just so sweet. I was like, Ringo, where have you been? Like, you're so sweet. Like, what? He just seemed so chill. He seemed kind of chill, but talented and just happy to I don't know. I just kind of fell in love with Ringo a little bit, even though he wasn't very prominent in the film, I felt. But the little bits that he were kind of like special. Well, apart from the part where he like broke wind, that was like weird and awkward, but okay.
They're all just sat there talking about something, and Ringo says, "I just farted."
I know. I was like, okay, Ringo. Thanks for that input. It was probably like the longest line he had in the whole film, but that's what he's going to be remembered for.
Well, that bit in the third film where he comes in and starts to play the beginnings of Octopus's Garden, and George is so happy because Ringo's got something a song of his own that he can
that
work
was
on.
so sweet. I love that little moment of like George coming over, and that was so nice. That was a sweet moment.
Yeah, and they all really want him to succeed with it, and so they're all sort of chipping in and helping him get the song together.
That's why I felt like Ringo is like the heart of the Beatles, because like everyone in the Beatles like loved Ringo. I think they all really loved Ringo, so that was sweet. The saddest part, I think it was definitely was it the start of the second one where Paul, like they come in the morning and I think there's just Paul and Ringo there, like no one else has turned up, and Paul is literally has tears in his eyes when he's like, and then there's just two, and it felt like at that moment he was like, oh no, like it showed like how much the Beatles and how much all this really meant to him, because he was kind of like devastated that this could be over.
I knew what clip you were referring to before you finished saying it, because it's such a standout moment. And well, I suppose at that moment, he's not even thinking, are we going to get it together in time for this TV show? He's thinking, is there going to be a band anymore?
Right. I feel like Paul felt like a lot of pressure. I feel like a lot of stress, and how he manages that is to be like kind of controlling, like to control the situation because of pressure and stress. But I really felt for him then, and it was really like sad, because when he said it, I was thinking, yeah, those are the only two Beatles that are actually left now, like Paul and Ringo. And it was like, well, and now there's just two. And I'm like, and literally now there is just two. And that was like, it got me. It was such a sad moment in seeing Paul. But then John walked in, and can we talk about John? Like, how did you think John was in this film? Yeah, I'd love to know your opinions on John in this film. Because a lot of people talk about John at this time and say, he was on drugs and he wasn't really, in it. And I just want to know what your opinion was.
In the first film, I got the impression he was turning up and playing the songs that were given to him by Paul. But, well, I don't know if it's just the edit, but I gave the impression that he wasn't producing much himself at the time. And I think there's a scene where Paul's sort of not annoyed, but he's sort of worried because they're not going to have enough songs and John isn't bringing any in.
Yeah. I'm going to talk about Paul. Like, I honestly found respect for Paul. Now, Paul is like my third favorite Beatle, and saying someone's like your third favorite Beatle is still like saying this person is like better than like everyone in the world, like being a third favorite Beatle is like still a massive thing. But like, I was just like astounded with how amazing Paul was at writing songs and just coming up with songs, and how talented he was. I was just like kind of gobsmacked. Like, Paul's actually amazing. Like, I never thought he wasn't, but this just kind of like cemented it in my brain, like how amazing Paul actually was. Because like John is my favorite, but Paul kind of blew me away during this.
Yeah, I mean, we've never really seen it like this, of actually witnessed the songs being created in this way. We've heard them talk about in retrospect what they were up to or what they were thinking when they wrote something, but to actually see it coming together,
it's like seeing a piece of magic.
Yeah,
like you said, with the Get Back and everything, it's just like, how's he doing this? Like, it's like some kind of genius, like, I swear.
I would say that being in a band is like having another family sometimes.
Well, you're with them like a lot. You're spending like a lot of time with them, right? And there's got to be some connection there, like to work together and jam and stuff.
Yeah, like I say, it's like a family, and you have good times and the times when you annoy each other, but beyond all that, you really love playing with these people, and and if anybody else from outside the group was to say something mean, for example, to someone in the group, then like a family, everybody would suddenly
band
go
together.
around them.
Yeah.
That's what it's like being in a band, really.
I mean, there's a bond. Like, even if you have little petty squabbles and fallouts, like there's a bond between you all.
You can see that they're kind of like almost brothers after all they've been through together.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I guess like it would feel kind of weird, I guess, having Yoko sat there. But yeah, you're right. Like, no one really kind of spoke to her. Now, there was a point where Linda came, and I think she brought, was it Heather? First child. I think that's her name. And they were like playing around in the studio. And yeah, people were kind of like a lot more welcome and warm to those than to Yoko. There was all like, it was actually really nice to see the Beatles having some fun. Like, I loved the point where like John and Yoko were like doing their little dance, and there was a point where Paul and John were like, I don't know, like messing around, like silly little songs and dancing, and just those kind of moments, like I loved seeing. I loved seeing like the happy side to it too, that it wasn't all just like falling out and stress and pressure. Like that actually like just a group of guys like kicking it and like having fun and just jamming and just, I mean, they were like 20 something year olds, you know, what would you expect? They're like in their 20s and they're just having fun, and I really enjoyed seeing that.
Yeah, they would keep breaking off from what they were doing and just play bits of rock and roll standards that they obviously loved as kids. Or they'd play little snatches of earlier songs that they'd written, or they might do it in a different style. And it's all just kind of letting steam off, really, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess like it could get a bit repetitive when they're having to keep doing take after take of the same kind of songs and learning the same songs. And sometimes, you know, you just want to mix it up and just mess around a bit and do something a little different, I guess. But I really, really enjoyed to see the lighter side of it as well. So that was really fun and enjoyable to watch for me.
Yeah. I enjoyed watching Ringo mess about with Heather as well on the drums.
It was so
pretending,
sweet. Like,
pretending to be scared when Heather's hitting the drums. He's going,
they were adorable. Like, yeah, it was super sweet. I loved it. I loved those little moments. There was lots of little moments throughout the film where I was just like funny, or them having a laugh, or just like little tender, sweet moments. Like some of the footage of this film like came out as another film before or something called Let It Be.
Yes.
Yeah, but I feel like I don't know what happened to that, but like you can't get a copy of that. I don't know what happened to it, but I feel like it was basically kind of like unedited and just showed some stuff, and I don't remember any kind of like fun moments in that. I don't know what that
was
was.
the original film by Michael Lindsay Hogg, who we see
Okay.
a lot in this film, talking to the Beatles.
Oh right, yeah.
So that was the original film, and I think it had a cinema release, and I'm
Right.
not sure it had much of a home release, and it's kind of been buried all this time. And
Yeah.
I think I think that film is the source of the idea that they were all falling out at this time.
That's what I
because
thought
of
too.
the way it was edited, and this is one of the big things that they were building up in their in the promotional stuff for Get Back, to say that it's actually a lot happier than that, and there's tensions obvious to see in the film, but there's also lots of light in there as well.
I think Peter done an amazing job on this film, and I'm kind of really happy that it was him that got it. But yeah, it was freaking long, and I don't have a very good attention span, so I kind of wish it was kind of just split up into even more parts just for my attention span. Because wasn't one of the episodes like 3 hours or something? And you know, I love the Beatles, and I could watch them forever, but I don't know. I don't have an attention span, so it was like long. I should have known that with Peter, like it's gonna be long, but maybe I should have just watched it in like an hour or so episodes. But that's me. That's just me and my attention span. Nothing like to say bad towards the film. But I was thinking, how would a person who's kind of like maybe likes the Beatles but not like a heavy Beatles fan, I wonder how they felt watching it. Would they feel like it was too long, you know? Because like for the actual, this was like a gem for the actual like hardcore Beatles fans, you know, we want to see like every detail, every second. But for those that are just like kind of casually like the Beatles, maybe it might have been like a bit too much, a bit too long to go into. But I don't know, maybe people have better attention spans than me.
Yeah,
Possible.
you sort of wonder if there should be a kind of 2 hour edit for people who to sort of kind of dip their toe in.
Yeah. But then I heard like is it gonna come out on like Blu-ray and be even longer? Because I mean he cut a lot out, but like I don't know, like for me it was kind of long enough, but I mean if there's more I'd watch it.
I know it's going to come out on Blu-ray because Beatles fans love physical media.
Yeah, for sure, like I will be getting it. Yeah,
there's no way that Apple are going to turn down the chance to sell
exactly.
it.
Money.
I don't know if that's going to come with any extra material or not.
Yeah, like I've heard whisperings, so I don't know. So should we just like kind of move on to the episode 3? For me, episode 3 was like kind of the best, the most like fun for me to watch, like the rooftop. That was kind of exciting. But did you hear all the suggestions they had before they decided on the rooftop? And while they were going through the suggestions, I kept like shouting, "No, the rooftop!" Like they could hear me, that they couldn't. But you know, they were talking about going like I can't remember where they were going, like abroad somewhere. Do you remember where it was? Some kind of
Yeah, I know the one you mean. I can't quite remember it, but they wanted
yeah.
to go to. It was an ancient place, wasn't it? And they
Yeah,
wanted
yeah. Like
to
some
go
kind
like,
of a Coliseum stadium type place,
yeah,
like ruins. And like George was like, no, like
well, the
no, I'm
idea
not
was
going.
that they would take the audience with them on a cruise ship.
Like there was
And
some wild ideas being thrown around.
remember the Beatles in the earlier in the 60s, just a few years ago, they couldn't walk down the street without having their clothes torn off by
Right, yeah.
ladies. So the idea of the four Beatles being trapped on a cruise ship with hundreds of Beatles fans,
Wow,
I don't think
yeah.
they would make it to their end.
So when they ended up with the rooftop idea, you know, honestly, I couldn't think of anything better. Like if I could go back in time, I kind of want to go to the rooftop. Like I really enjoyed hearing you know, the people in the street and watching the people in the street and seeing what they had to say and their reactions. Like I super enjoyed that. I remember there was like interviewing it and the girls was like, "It's the Beatles, ain't it?" Like the accents just got me. Like, and I was actually surprised, like some of the older people was like, "Oh yeah, I like the Beatles. I like listening to the Beatles. They're all right." Like I was, because I always wondered with the Beatles when they were out in their like heyday and popular, were they just like down with the kids and the older people like, "Oh, those horrible Beatles need to shave and cut their hair," you know? I didn't know. So to hear some of the older people like actually like the Beatles too, it was like pretty cool.
Yeah, it's easy to forget that none of the people who were watching it at the time had any idea that the Beatles were going to play on that day. It was supposed to be a complete surprise. Obviously, we think if we were there, we'd be on the rooftop watching them, but
Right.
no one had any idea this was going to happen.
It was it must have been super exciting just like hearing and like looking up and like, where are they? And like they're on the roof, like, and it was just such a moment. But you know, the thing that got me that I found funny is like, so they set up all these cameras, but the fact is like they put a camera on the building like opposite, but they didn't like ask or anything. They just went on someone else's building and set up a camera to shoot across. I just found the audacity funny. And when they started playing up there, um, it was like some kind of magic. Like I don't know what happened, but as soon everything that had gone on in the studios, any fighting, any falling out, it kind of just like faded away. And when they were like playing live together, you know, they just all come together, get it? And they were just like amazing. And I feel like a lot of the problems were also they were kind of nervous to perform live. You know, when George and everyone else were talking, I feel like why he didn't want to do some of these like big shows or anything. I think they were kind of nervous. They haven't performed live for like a while, right? And I just feel like they were kind of nervous to take that step and go back performing live. So when they kind of did this like rooftop thing, I feel like they kind of remembered this is awesome. This is what we do, and they like really enjoyed it. So it was like an awesome moment for me.
Yeah, they've done a few albums where in the studio in which they were recording songs bit by bit, recording the drums, then some rhythm guitar, and building it up that way, recording every part separately. And I think apparently what had happened was they did some TV shows and just played a few rock and roll numbers to the audience between takes. And it reminded them of how much they liked playing live. So they decided to do the next album as live as much as they could.
I am so glad they did. And, you know, I found it really interesting when it said, like, this song that they played on the rooftop made it into the final album, like this version of it. And that was just awesome. There was just like an awesome energy. And then can we talk about the cops? When the cops were called, first off, what Karen called the cops, I don't know, but we know it was a Karen. And second off, so my friend, our friend, Eric, if you're watching this, hi Eric, in America, he said to me, like, I really want to hear your reaction to the Beatles. Well, here it is. But he said, I have a question. Are all the police, like, people that polite in the UK? Like they were then? Are they that polite now? And I hadn't watched the final episode, so I wasn't quite sure at that time when he was asking me. And now I understand what he's talking about, because, you know, I did find it actually quite funny the way the police approached and dealt with the situation. That was one of the funniest parts for me.
Can you imagine if this were happening today, what the police would be like?
Yeah, like back then, I think there was knocking on the door. I was like, could I perchance come in to see what is going on in here? And then nowadays, I'm like, "Oi, it's the police! Open up!" Ramming the door down and like barging in. So
come to give the Beatles this Asbo. Yeah.
Exactly. And oh, how funny was it with that the hidden camera they had in the entrance, which was probably the size of a Dalek, you know. It wasn't very hidden, I don't think, but I'm glad it was there to catch the moments. And when they were talking to I guess the secretary, she was just like, oh, and there's like, well, do they have to make this much noise or something? And it's like, yeah, they're on the roof. It was just like funny. I found the whole interaction between them and the police hilarious.
Yeah, that's a point. I wonder, did those policemen even realise they were on the roof? Because presumably they couldn't see from the street.
To start with, they didn't, because they said, well,
Yeah.
I remember them saying something like, isn't there soundproofing in here? Why is it so loud? Why does it have to be so loud? And I think the secretary or something was like, they're on the roof. And so, and they waited so long to gain access to go up to the roof. They waited for someone like to come down. And we didn't talk about Mal Evans. Like I think he was the one that come down and he was like trying to handle it. But can we just talk about him for a moment, because I really love him. Can I just say rest in peace? It was actually really sad how he died. It was sad. But did you see his little moment with the Maxwell silver hammer, like ding ding on the little anvil, like in his little happy face? I think he's such an awesome character, and he did so much, like running around doing like this and that for the Beatles. But that was his little moment, the little ding. Yeah.
Apparently, Mel did that because in order to get a good dink on that anvil, they needed quite a substantial hammer. And in order to hit it twice, ding, ding, in time, it needed to be kind of somebody with muscles, and Mal was a big bloke.
Yeah, he was quite big.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember like he came up with the police or something, and I feel like he was going to the amps and trying to like turn them down a bit. It was like, oh, the police, I need to turn them down, and no one was listening, no one cared. Like, but he was like trying to keep it all together. But the funniest moment is when Paul turned around and saw the police. How happy was Paul? He was like, yes, this is what I wanted, some controversy. Like, Paul knew how the media works. He was like, let's get in the papers with like the police like pulling the Beatles off the roof on their new album. Like, this is how we sell albums, people. Like, Paul knew. So when he saw the police, he got a little spring in his step and he was like, yes, this is it. It made him play even better. It was one of the best moments.
Pretty much whatever happened, it was going to be a good end to the film, wasn't it? If they'd been dragged away bodily from the roof, that would have been a good ending.
Like, I feel Paul like really wanted that. He really wanted something to happen. So yeah, he was really excited when he saw the police, and it just made him play even more and harder and louder. So it was so funny, and they just still stood there watching. Like, the police didn't even stop it. They just kind of stood there like, wow, this isn't very good, is it? When is this going to stop?
The two policemen stood in the corner, kind of pressuring them to turn the amps off. Somebody finally turns George's amp off. I think it's just to appease the police, and George turns it back on
I know.
immediately, carries on playing.
I
And
loved it.
there's a bit where they finish one song and then immediately go into another one, because if they left a pause, that the police would have stepped in and said, "Okay, boys, that's enough." But they
Exactly.
decided to carry on playing as long as possible.
I just think it was just great. It was just a great ending to the film and to the whole thing, and it was just one of the moments. I just loved hearing the people and the accents and just the way people spoke back then, and just listening to the crowds, and when they're asking, "Do you like the Beatles?" "No, I think they're rubbish," or whatever. It was just funny. It's just funny, but also they sounded freaking amazing up there. And did you see, like, it was freezing, their little fingers was like red to the bone, so I don't even know how they even managed to play, but it sounded freaking amazing. And the fact that those like takes like were the final takes, like on the album, like some of them, it was just I love it. I love it even more.
They got an amazing sound considering they're up on a windy
That's
rooftop.
what I was thinking too. Like, it sounds so awesome. Yeah, like if I step outside with my phone in the wind, it's just, yeah, it's bad. I don't know how they're doing it, but yeah.
And you can see they've got all that all the foam wrapped around the microphones to
Yeah.
try and cut out the wind. And yeah, they did a really good job of that. And yeah, to think some of those songs, yeah, they made it onto the album as the actual studio tracks, even though it's on a windy rooftop. So obviously they rose to the occasion of playing live in front of an audience, even if the audience was like 200 feet below them.
But like some special kind of people got to get up there. I don't know how. Who were the people? I don't know who all the people was, but there was like some people got special privileges. I don't know how, and got up on there. But then, did you see some guy who's just like climbing on a roof on someone else's roof? Like, hello,
Oh, yeah.
health and safety. Like, people wanted to see the Beatles, So yeah. And then, did you see they went to the edge and they were looking over at the crowds? I think the Beatles were, and it was such an awesome moment when they could see like their fans again. It's like, yes, we love you guys, keep playing, like, you're amazing. It was, I freaking love it. Like, it was awesome to watch.
Yeah, I would have done exactly the same if I was on the next rooftop along. I'd be hanging onto the chimney trying to
Yeah.
watch. And yeah, I don't know what I would have done if I'd just gone into town one day and the Beatles were playing on a rooftop nearby. I'd probably get a big ladder or something and just do as much of the show as I could.
I wonder how loud it actually was. I remember them saying, it's like, we can hear it all the way down to somewhere. And then there was a older woman else. She said something like, I was just going to sleep or having a nap or something. I'm like, what time was it? What time were they doing this? She was like, they woke me up from my nap or something. I don't know. Like, I just found that part like hilarious. I love the little interviews and the way that Peter put it together, so you could see like the people down there on the screen, and then the Beatles from different angles all at the same time on the screen. Like, I really enjoyed that. It was great. I think the whole thing was great. It really gave me a deeper insight into the Beatles and them as people and their connection together, and how they made their music that I didn't really know before. So I'm so grateful for this film. I feel like it's opened a lot of people's eyes. And I'm so grateful for the footage that they did that.
Yeah, I'm really glad they let the footage out again after all this time. I think it was possibly the memories of the first editing let it be, giving the impression that it was such a miserable time. It maybe even affected the remaining Beatles memories, and so they were happy for this to stay in a dusty corner somewhere. But yeah, it's kind of shone a new light on that time, really, hasn't it?
I always think about that, is they're interviewed and the ages they are now, and they're asked stuff from like so long ago. Like, how do you remember? I can't remember what I did yesterday. I don't know how they remember this stuff. And obviously, as we know, like, memories like change. The more we think of them and remember them, they just change over time. So yeah, I really wonder how they felt watching this back. yeah, I wonder how Paul and Ringo did feel watching this, because it's gonna refresh and probably bring a lot to their mind that they actually forgot at that time, and maybe they even felt like, oh, maybe it was like a like everyone said, like hard time and a bad time together, but this surely showed them, what fun they had and what connection they had as a group as well. So I think it was great for them as well. I just wanted to say, because I felt like we forgot, can we talk about the fashion?
Oh yeah.
I was in love with, like, obviously I'm already in love with the Beatles fashion, but some of those clothing, I would wear that right now.
Oh
I
man,
loved it.
there were so many bits of clothing that I thought I really like that suit, or I really like that shirt and things. But there's no way I could pull it off. It looks really good on them.
Right. Like I remember there was some, like, was it George? He had like this purple, like silk, like, I don't know, like shirt, ruffled shirt, and then some kind of trousers, and then these big kind of like furry kind of boot thing. I don't know what this combination was, but I was living for it. And then that, like, the paisley shirts and like the striped kind of like trousers. I would have all of that in my wardrobe right now and wear it. Like, I was down for the fashion. I loved looking at the fashion. And also, can I just say, Paul looked freaking amazing with that haircut and that beard. Like, how is his hair so luscious and shiny, and it just looked perfect? And I was kind of jealous, thinking, I want that haircut. Like, how is it just falling so perfectly on his little perfect face, Paul? Damn it, how are you so perfect?
I think
Yeah.
the next time you get your hair done, you should take a picture of Paul McCartney in with you and say, "Can you do it like this?"
I think I need to grow it just a little bit more here, and then we're kind of getting there. But with that beard and that hair, like, he could have been in a shampoo commercial. Like, he looked amazing. What the heck? And then John in white. I loved it when he wore all the whites. Him and Yoko were like, wearing white at that time, I guess, or something. All I can say is, like, my roundup of the whole film, Peter Jackson and everyone that worked on the film and everything they did just made me fall in love with the Beatles even more, if that was even possible. And I'm just so grateful for this footage, which I definitely am gonna watch again, because I feel like just watching it once, there's probably so much that I missed. Like I said, when I first watched it, I was kind of ill, so I don't know if I was all there, So I really do feel like something I can watch again, and each time you watch it, you'll find a little nugget of something else. So yeah, I'm just super grateful that we have this footage. Finally, I thought it was never gonna be, but then it beed. It beed.
Then they let it be.
They let it be.
Yeah, amazing stuff for any Beatles fan and any music fans.
Oh, for sure. I would definitely recommend it if you haven't already seen it. So that was our review and reaction to Get Back. If you like this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you thought of the film in the comments down below. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also subscribe to Med, and you can follow him on Instagram. It was Med, or on YouTube. I will link it. I think it's I Wanna Quiz You Up. Is that right?
Yes, I don't have a consistent branding.
But I will link it anyway. So go check him out too. And Med, I just want to say thank you for watching it with me, and thank you for doing this video with me. I really appreciate it. So thanks.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure having you in my home.
And I hope we can meet up in person again soon, because it's been too long and I really miss you.
Yeah, that would be cool. Hope to see you soon.
Awesome. So thanks everyone for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.
Cheerio.